This story time involves a little story called Death is a Funny Thing. One day, a boy named Charlie Wackaweed was making a wish on a star. He did not know that the wish he would be making would change his life forever. It was late one night when Charlie was looking at the stars. He had heard that if you wish on the first star you see, your wish will become true. So he spotted the first star he saw, and he made a wish on it. His wish was that whatever he said or did, for it to come true. So for instance, if he would say, "Let it snow," it would snow. Just a few days later, he was sitting in a geometry class, wondering about the test they would have in about 5 minutes. When he got the test, he sat there wishing that he would ace the test. He took the test that was supposed to be very hard, and he thought that it was easy. He got it back, and it was an A+. He was amazed because he had never had a test and aced it before. And this test was probably the hardest one that he had ever taken. He asked all his classmates what they had gotten on the test, and they all replied, a C+ or lower. Charlie was very excited that he had gotten a better grade than Chris, who was an A+ student, and Chris had made get a C-. There was one kid that Charlie did not like. He wished that something bad would happen to him. The very next day, he was out of school. Charlie asked his teacher where he was. He said, "He is in the hospital with a very deadly disease. It came on him so fast. None of the doctors have a cure. It is really weird. I have never seen anything like it."
Oh god, it's COVID. Fuck.
The very next day, Charlie heard that the kid with the deadly disease had died. Charlie was upset about the whole situation. He knew that it was his fault that he had died, so he went to his funeral with sorrow and regret. I have no sympathy for this kid. He was at home, alone, late one night. All of a sudden, the phone rang. He ran downstairs to answer it, thinking it might be his parents. He picked up the phone and he heard the dial tone. He thought to himself, "That's weird," and then went back up to his room without thinking more about it. This happened several more times and he still ignored it. Then all of a sudden, the doorbell rang. He went down to answer it again, thinking it might be his best friend Jared. He opened the door and said, "Hey Jared, what's..." But then he noticed no one was there. He thought to himself, "It must be those little kids that leave down the street prank calling and ringing the doorbell and running." So he then went back upstairs to his room, thinking no more of it. Then there was a peck on the window. He really started to get kind of scared and curious. He went to the window, opened it, and yelled, "Get out of here, you little kids!" But he still saw no... How old is Charlie, by the way? He flipped on the TV, and right then, the power went out. He knew that the kids couldn't have done something like that because he didn't have a fuse box. Excuse me? He now realized that the kids couldn't have done any of the other things now, and he was starting to get really scared. He went and got a flashlight, and he saw red eyes across the room and coming very fast toward him. He all of a sudden heard a low, creepy, but familiar voice calling, "Charlie, Charlie, Charlie. How could you do something like this to me?" Charlie replied, "Who are you? What do you want from me? I have no clue what you're talking about." The voice replied, You do know what I'm talking about, Charlie Wackaweed. That last name. All of a sudden, it jumped out behind the shadows, and Charlie saw a beaten, flesh-removed kid that Charlie recognized as the kid that he had wished something bad would happen to. Wait. Beaten, flesh-removed... I thought that he had a disease. What's this beaten stuff? His eyes were blood red, and the flesh that he had left was purple and blue. Charlie was scared to death. He told the kid he had never meant for him to be killed or even hurt, but he didn't believe him. The kid replied, "Now it is your turn to follow the pain and death that I had suffered through." That's a fair point, Dum-Dum the Fifth. He could just wish the ghost away. The kid replied, "Oh, shit, I already read that." Then the kid took Charlie out of the house and tied him up to a tree. The kid then dug a huge hole and untied Charlie. So he could just run, I guess. Also, how is a ghost that's incorporeal doing all of this physical stuff? "I'm sorry that it has to end this way, Charlie. But this is what you have to repay me by doing. Goodbye, Charlie." Then the kid threw Charlie in the hole and buried him alive. Really? The wish thing just went away? No one really knew what happened to Charlie Wackaweed. Until one day, a clipping all of a sudden appeared in the newspaper, telling what had happened, and who had actually killed the kid that Charlie didn't like. I am telling you now, be careful what you wish for, because it just might come true. And remember, kids, you miss 100% of the wishes you don't make. That wasn't part of the story. This is not a true story, or maybe it is?
Question mark?
Question mark and 5 asterisks. Did the ghost write the newspaper? I think somehow the ghost got the wishing power? Like, maybe that's the one good thing about the deadly disease he got.